Kex shop employees, what is your dumbest story? Well, I did work at a Kex shop myself, but this is not my story. Unfortunately, it's my sister's. She worked at a bigger Kex shop than myself. So, one time this dude comes in complaining that his vibrator does not work and he wants a new one. My sister tells him that they have a no exchange policy. No returns, period. That's usually the deal. This guy, however, won't move. He keeps yelling. They tell him to leave. And then, as you may expect, comes the disgusting part. This guy pretty much lays his problem out for all to see, with the hope that they will come up with a solution. He reaches into his pants, pulls a pucking vibrator out of his azzy, and slaps it down on the counter. Slime and all. It doesn't work. Well, to bring this story to a quick close, this man did not get a new vibrator. He was escorted out, threatened with a call to the police, and promptly left the establishment. Story 2, worked in one for a year and a half. It wasn't actually too bad, mostly. It was bright and airy, as opposed to dark and dingy. Some horrific products, though. Who really needs to spice up their Kex life to the extent they need to buy a 300 German-made Onal speculum? Worst day working there was my second shift. Guy comes in, asking for leather underwear. This being a fairly normal request, I go and show him where they are. He picks a couple and asks me to try them on. I show him over to the changing room and explain the shop's policy that they must be tried on over other clothes, and that any damage to them means they have to be purchased, then leave him to it. I'm dealing with a couple of other customers. They mostly come in to buy poppers, then bugger off right quickly. When I realize he's taking an awfully long time, so I knock the wall of the changing room and ask, "Everything all right in there?" No reply. Oh shit. Was that a moan? Draw the curtain back fairly gingerly and see this 50-year-old man, shemen trickling down his legs from a pair of leather knickers. It's also all over the mirror. I don't think I'll take this pair. Actually, thankfully, managed to convince him he had to buy the pair then, so there was no more drama. But being the decent man I am, I threw in a little packet of tissues. Just as well, I don't retch easily. Cleaning up the remnants in the changing room wasn't exactly the most pleasant of tasks. Story 3. It's not too weird or wild, just kind of funny and nasty. I worked at an adult novelty store before I was out. As a trans woman myself would see this regular customer coming into the shop about once a week. I never figured out if he was a man cross-dressing or she was a trans woman that could not pass at all. I had a lot of questions to ask her or him because I was very curious about experienced trans people. But she never say a word to anybody, and never bought any items either, just went into the video booths. Antisocial and weird customers are totally normal in this business. Now the store started getting a really strong smell of feces in it, despite the fact the store was well maintained, and our booths were always cleaned out when a customer finished, so we couldn't figure out the source of the foul odor. Why does work have to be like X-Files one day? I was with the owner reviewing the security tapes, because we had a shoplifting problem. We knew the guy that was stealing. A different customer from the first part of the story. We just needed video evidence to threaten him to pay up. My manager was not afraid to threaten to expose thieves to their wife or businesses. That's when we saw the source of feces smell. Our transy customer was taking dildos off displays and bringing them in the private video booth with him, her. Then he would come out and put the dildos back where they belonged, presumably after shoving them up her azzy. My manager told me to go over and check the dildos. I said I'll check some if he checks some. Sure enough, the first one I smelled reeked of ass and even had little flecks of poo in the crease. Being a legit store concerned for the health of our customers, we didn't just wash them down and put them back on the shelf. Using gloves, we double-bagged and trashed all the open dildos that were on display in the store. A couple $100 lost at least. When the manager confronted the dildo abuser, he just turned and ran. Never came back as far as I know. Story 4. I went shopping with my wife when she met two of her friends. They decided to go buy a funny dildo for a stag party, and well, I just went with them. I felt a bit out of place, so I just stood there and waited for them while they chatted about the right dildo to buy. A guy saw us, and as he passed, he whispered to me, "You lucky bastard!" Story 5. I was the co-manager of a Kex toy store for 4 years to help pay my living expenses during college. My best friend was the other manager. We were professional about it, never judged what people bought, at least to their faces, and generally just had a great time getting paid to hang out and talk about Kex all day. The funniest thing that ever happened was one day when we were working together. We were both sitting at the front counter when this awkward guy came in and made a beeline straight to the Prono DVDs in the back. He was back there for maybe 30 or 45 minutes, meticulously going through all of the titles. Awkward guy finally came to the front with this massive stack of maybe 10 or 12 titles. He visibly panicked when he realized that both of us would be ringing up and bagging his new wank bank material. I really don't blame him. I don't think I'd feel great about someone from the opposite Kex going through my hoard of 10 DVDs of the shit. Anyway, he was sweating and his little hands were shaking while he put everything up on the counter. I rang everything up and gave him the total, and he just stared. He managed to stammer that he had forgotten to take tax into consideration and needed to get rid of a few DVDs to be able to afford everything. He started going through all of the titles, one by one, and adding up the total on his little watch calculator. But his hands were shaking, so he kept messing up the total and having to start all over again. This went on for several minutes, until he freaked out. He started to cry and got so frustrated that he suddenly ran out of the store, leaving all of the DVDs on a little pile on the counter. Priceless. Guy freaks out trying to buy Prono and runs away. Story 6? I had seen this couple on Wife Swap. The dude was real effeminate, and a constant theme of the episode was about how not gay he was. Well, I knew they lived in the same town as me because I saw them in Target one time, but they came into my Kex shop and bought 3 DVDs of the Wife Catches Husband Having Kex with Other Men variety. It took every inch of my being to not jump up and down and say, "I saw you guys on Wife Swap. Isn't that hilarious? You guys are real people," because obviously I don't want to embarrass them, nor do I care what gets them off, but I've never felt like such a 5-year-old before. Also, one time this guy came in. He was younger, a little awkward. He approached me and asked for help. He was looking for an apparatus to help him with anal Kex for himself. So I lead him over to where we keep the anal kit starter kits, numbing lube, gradient-sized dildos so you can get comfortable, etc. But this wasn't what the guy wanted. You see, he told me, "I want to find out if I'm gay or not, so I need to put something closer to a penis in there." I tried to explain to him that that's not how being gay works, but he wouldn't relent. He dragged me around the store for about 30 minutes until he finally settled on a comically large and cheap penis-shaped water gun. I told him I did not want to hear about it when his little experiment went horribly wrong. He never came back. Story 7. Working one day, I had a slightly disheveled middle-aged woman come in and begin looking at the lingerie. I approached her when she began digging through the clothing intently looking for something. She asked if I could look up a specific product for her if she provided me with a receipt. I took the receipt for the product and punched the SKU into the computer and went off to find the product with the woman following right behind me. It was a purple corset, which I pulled out so that she could see it. The woman noticed that at the end of the SKU on the receipt she provided there was an additional letter S and inquired about it. I told her that it meant small and that the other sizes would have M or L, etc. to denote the size. She began crying on the spot, thanked me, and began to leave. Obviously, by this point, I was totally confused and concerned, so I asked the woman who was now sobbing if she was okay. She turned around and explained to me that her husband had purchased her that corset in a medium, and that it didn't fit her properly, so she asked to return it for a larger size. When she got the receipt from her husband to exchange the product, she noticed that the receipt showed he had purchased a size small, but she received a size medium. The receipt also showed other lubricants and such that she had never seen. She told me that she had long suspected her husband of cheating, but that this was confirmation. She again thanked me and left. Accidentally helped a woman discover her husband was cheating. Story 8. I have worked in a Kex shop for a few years now, and trying to pick a story is proving to be tough. I have the daily basis stupid stories about questions people ask me. Then I have crazy once every so often stories like what others have posted. We battery test all products before they leave, and my favorite is when it works in the store. They take it home. It doesn't work, and when they bring it back demanding a refund, they had the batteries in backwards. Our stalker stories are also pretty funny, along with who many people try to masturbate in a kex shop. On that note, I give you our most recent crazy story. Gentleman comes in, looks through our movies, selects one along with purchases a fleshlight, a male masturbator. He asked several questions, trying to get us to go into detail on how to use it. When he checks out, he asks if we have a viewing room. We don't. He then asked if he can use the bathroom. We won't let him take the toy in there. Well, he decided to then go sit in his car with his portable DVD player parked at the front door and try out his fleshlight. We noticed he was out there and didn't know what he was doing until a coworker comes in freaking out that he is masturbating, and she saw everything. We send our male coworker out there to politely ask him to stop and leave. "I kid you not," he replied, "but I haven't finished yet." We ended up having to call the cops on him. He was arrested for several charges, and Guy was still going at it when the cops showed up. Oh, people. Yay, sometimes I love my job. Sometimes I don't. Story 9. I kind of work for a kex shop. A kex toy retailer pays me to write blogs for them, look after their Twitter account, that sort of thing. Because of this, I get shitloads of people inquiring about kex toys. Anyway, I've had a couple of creepy emails and questions ranging from, "How much will it cost me to buy one of your personal used vibrators? Not for sale, mate," and my all-time favorite, "Can I buy a fleshlight which feels like a female dog?" So weird. Story 10. Wouldn't really say it was a kex shop, but I worked for Ella Senza Lingerie for quite a few years. One of my favorite stories is that of a man who came in casually browsing. He picked out a few he liked for his girlfriend, and even made a fake phone call or two to her best friend. Everything was fine until I ducked into the back room for a few moments, and I came out, and he was gone. So I went about fixing racks and other exciting retail duties. I hear a man scream, "Fuck," from the fitting rooms, not even realizing that was still in the shop, nor that he was in our fitting rooms. I ask him if he is okay, and he starts crying, opens the doors and apologizes, and literally pushes past me, running out of the store. Anyways, turns out the dude was a lady and soiled some of our underwear with period blood. I felt more awkward about the fact that I called him sir multiple times while he was in the shop. Still doesn't beat the woman who peed in our fitting rooms a total of 4 times over the course of a year. Story 11. I used to work at Lover's Lane, and our toys had a no-return policy, obviously. We have to put batteries into the toy and turn it on in front of the customer to prove that it worked. We had to say, "I'm going to test this toy out for you to make sure it works." I swear every third person who bought something said something along the lines of, "You're not going to stick that up your azzy, are you?" Trying to be funny. Got old real quick. Story 12. I was in a kex shop in the suburbs outside London with a young lady, and a guy walked in. A little bit drunk, but nothing offensive. He went straight to the dildos and picked up some sort of fist dildo thing. He made small talk with the girl who sold it to him, and he was unnecessarily loud and annoying. But hey, we all get a bit nervous and act out of character in kex shops, particularly after a few drinks. Anyway, he left and we went back to doing our thing, relieved at the return to quiet ambience, despite the moaning from the playing DVD on the display screen. Then all fucking hell broke loose as an angry lady appeared in the threshold, clutching the fist dildo the previous shopper had departed with. "Who sold my husband this fucking thing?" she asked. All eyes were on the girl by the till, who smiled and was already stifling a chuckle. The angry fist carrier stomped over screaming, "It should be illegal to sell these. I doubt it would fit in a fucking horse, let alone in me." The next bit was best, and will live long in my memory. "Which product would you like to exchange it for?" "Exchange. Fucking exchange. I want a refund. There is no chance of him sticking anything up me after this." Long story short, she left with her cash several minutes later as tears of laughter rolled down our cheeks. Story 13. I had a deaf woman call the store using a Teletype service. She'd type something, an intermediary would read it to me, and would then type my reply for the customer. Every time the Teletype lady had to say butt plug, she would stumble over the word, and then pause and take a deep breath before moving on. You could almost see her gathering her courage before reading each sentence. I said butt plug as many times as I could. Deaf lady later sent us a fax requesting her butt plug be lesbian colored. I sent her a purple one. Story 14. In a previous life, I worked in a dildo shop that had the spank booths down a hall in the back. We had a large gay clientele, and there were usually hustlers hanging around. A few of the booths had glory holes, and the hustlers would wait for someone to go in. Then they'd enter the adjoining booth and transact business. It was understood among the regulars that this was the way things worked, and there was usually no problems. One night, this big cowboy came in. This was Florida in the 80s, and there was a lot of cattle country. He was a real cowboy, not a city poser. He got a roll of quarters from me and went to the back. I was busy with unpacking something and didn't notice anything else until I heard a loud, piercing scream coming from the hall. I ran back to the hall and the cowboy is slamming out of one of the glory hole booths mad as hell. Some queer mothercucker just stuck his dack through the hole in the wall. I said, "Yeah, that's what the holes are for. What did you do?" I'm getting the key out to open the door, from which I hear crying for help and whimpering. Cowboy said, "I kicked that dack." He was wearing heavy cowboy boots. He stomped away in disgust. "No loss. I hate homophobes." Poor little hustler was curled up in the other booth with blood staining his tight little white shorts. Florida in the 80s, remember? I helped him up and got him a cab. Never did see the cowboy again. The hustler was back pitching and receiving the next day. Story 15. Okay, so last year I was being hazed for my college sports team, and we had a sort of scavenger hunt to complete throughout the day. Stuff like finish a keg by the end of the day. One of the tasks on the list was to return the ball spreader to local kex shop. Backstory about the ball spreader: at our team's Christmas party, one lesbian freshman girl on the team received a ball spreader from a senior girl. She said it was used, but had been washed thoroughly. The freshman girl obviously had no use for it, so she hid it in our captain's house somewhere to get rid of it. Back to the hazing. I thought that task was pretty funny, so I offered to do it, while another guy filmed it on his phone. So we walk into the kex shop at around 2 p.m., both a little drunk from the keg we were tasked to finish, and trying very hard to keep straight faces. I walk up to the counter and say, deadpan, "Hello, I'd like to return this ball spreader. I feel as though it did not adequately spread my balls." "I'm a girl." The store clerk didn't even crack a smile, just said, "Yeah, that's not gonna happen." I go, "Oh, okay, I guess that's reasonable." And we left the store. I guess he didn't think I was kidding. Story 16. So when I was in my college days, my fraternity was having Hell Week, whereby we non-violently haze our new recruits. One of our traditions is the goat room. The goat room consists of a goat, 15 recruits, and enough kex toys to make a pervert cringe. We would throw the newbies in and tell them that the last one to get anally penetrated was out of the frat. Joke, of course, although one year we rushed 2 gay guys, so this kind of backfired. So as recruit chair, it was my job to purchase new toys, etc. for Rush. So I head down to the nearest kex shop over in Daytona Beach. I walk in, start grabbing dildos, vibrators, blow-up doll. I am using one of those little shopping carts, magazines, etc. When I make my way over towards the rear room, which is also the exit and cashier, the girl behind the counter is this really hot girl I've known since middle school. My face turned 10 shades of purple. She just looked at me and said, "Wow, Mike, I always thought you were an overachiever, but wow." I didn't know what to say, so I slapped down the $300 bucks I had collected from the Frat brothers and just smiled awkwardly. Story 17. I didn't work in a kex shop, but I worked in a head shop that sold kex toys. One of the funnier things, that may have only been funny if you were there, was the cute Lil 411 girl who came in and bought the Rambone, a fake dong that was about foot long and 3-inch diameter. One of the weirder things was this lady who walked in with purpose, came immediately up to the counter and said, "I need the strongest vibrator you have." I stammered, I'm a guy. I don't know what's strong." She said, "Well, where are they?" I showed her the vibrators and she said, "I'll take that one." We walked back to the counter. She opened the package, put batteries in it right there at the counter, turned around and lifted her dress, turned on the vibrator, placed it up there and moaned for about 5 seconds. Then she turned around and said, "Yay, that'll do," and walked out. Finally, I had this late 20s attractive yuppie-looking girl come in and try to return a giant double dong. I told her we couldn't take returns on Kex toys, for obvious reasons. She then got on a soapbox and went on for a good 5 minutes about how disgusting this thing was, how her friends got it for her bachelorette party, and she was really pissed off that they would get such a disgusting thing. I told her, sorry, I can't take it back, so she just left it on the counter and walked out. I then threw it in the trash. Story 18. There's a Kex shop stall on the streets of Mumbai that employs some rather enthusiastic people. One guy in particular, a friend of mine, used to work near there and had to walk past the place on her way home. Every single day, that employee would chase her down the street saying things like, "Madam G Bildo, would you like to buy a Bildo? We have them in all shapes and sizes." Edit. Just texted her, and she told me that he even shouted things like, "Black, white, brown. We have them all. Do you like red? We have those too. Blue, green, and so on." Story 19. I worked at a store in northwest part of Washington state. They sold toys, videos, and had small 3x3 or 4x4 booths in the back with glass doors. Inside of the booths were small TVs that play one of 8 videos for a quarter for a minute or so. There was also a healthy group of Kex addicts that would shop up there. Some would show up for my entire 8-hour shift browsing the hallways looking for Kex from a fresh face. I would be considered a bear in the gay community, so for the year or so I worked there, I got hit on at least 3 times a week. In an odd way, I think it helped that my own confidence being hit on so much and so often. One of the stories I commonly tell people is about slugging. You would have a younger 20-year-old guy roll into a shop to watch a flick and masturbate to show off his package to whoever was there. Then, you might have an older 50 or 70-year-old guy who comes in, sees the show, and waits till the younger guy finishes. Then, and keep in mind this part is graphic, the older guy licks up the younger guy's comm, wherever it happened to land. That is slugging. Story 20. Worked in one illegally at the age of 17 for the summer. Here are some things that I experienced. 1. Guys who would call into the store, breathe into the phone, and then hang up. 2. The vendor who would restock the incest story pamphlets we had on the counter. 3. The creepers who would stalk me and wait in the parking lot with video cameras. 4. Awkwardly seeing my 5th grade teacher, and at the time, my former student government teacher, returned videos. 5. My very conservative dad's best friend, who returned a fisting video and a gangbang vid. BTW, the fisting was not of women but of men. I had to ask my dad for his number with some made-up lie, and after asking him to please not tell my dad, the friend goes, "Trust me, no one needs to know." 6. The smelly, homeless-looking guy spending 2 hours taking fake butts out of the package, smacking them to test them out, then purchasing one, and then getting onto a bus. 7. Knowing I had some type of influence on increasing Asian video rentals purchases by 300% during the time I was there. 8. My dad blowing up when he did my taxes and noticed American X and thinking I was a stripper. Story 21. I have. 2. 1. A guy tried to rerun a half-used bottle of lube. When I told him that wasn't happening, he wanted to speak with the owner. I called the owner. He told the guy the same thing. Guy gets pissed and squirts remainder of the bottle all over the inside and outside of the store. Luckily, he didn't know which car was mine. And yes, I had to clean it up. 2. Had an old couple come in. Old as in 75, 80. They were nice, and I don't judge. Good for them. They are looking around, as I'm in the middle of my required tape count. Yes, VHS tapes. I hear the old guy ask where all the movies are. As I turn to look at him, the old lady had unbuttoned the entire length of her dress and was standing there butt-fucking naked. To this day, it is one of the worst things I have ever seen. Story 22. Was employed in one briefly. I'd answer the phone and people would try to phone Kex me. If I'm going to phone Kex you, I am getting paid $1.99 a minute. Thank you very much. A gaggle of heinous rednecks tried to proposition me to allow them to test a toy on me. No gracias. We had a customer who would go into the booths for 4 to 6 hours at a time, smoke heavily, non-smoking facility, but the manager let him do it because of how much he spent. Bring a big gulp and drink it, and then evacuate his bladder into the spent big gulp cup. For some reason, there was a chalkboard in the bathroom. Not even sure why we had a bathroom. I walked in there after a customer had used it, and he'd written, "God, I want to lick your peach." Once I found $60 in the corner. An elderly man came in and bought a giant pile of DVDs. He called later to report that he couldn't figure out how to make them work with his VHS player. Nothing too earth-shattering. I wore a pink wig a lot. NBD. Story 23. I live and work in a very conservative area, but our store still does very well. One day, I was working the late shift and got a call from a woman with a raspy voice and an unknown number. She asked my name, what adult novelties are, and then started being horribly mean. I answered all her questions, and when she started being mean, I asked her kindly if she needed anything. She said that I should get a real job because I'm a single mom, to which I replied that she must be confused because I am neither single, nor am I a mother. She finally said, I should just kill you and kill myself. I'm right outside. So I ran to the back of the store to call police. I heard someone walk into the store. Just before I dialed 911, the phone rang again, and the caller ID said, unknown. I answered, and a man on the other end informed me that it was all a prank. I have very bad anxiety, so I didn't find it very funny. There are a lot more stories, but that one is the scariest. Story 24. An elderly couple came in one day to the store, and the lady comes over to me and explains she needs pills for her husband because he can't get it up. I try to politely explain that we don't sell that kind of product and that they should go to a doctor. The lady proceeds to start trying to explain to me what the problem is, as she seems to think I just don't understand. This repeats for about 5 to 10 minutes before she finally accepts we don't sell Viagra. Another time, a guy propositioned me but to come home with him so he could make me a new wardrobe of clothing, cook Indian food for me and treat me like a princess. Nothing funny or weird, were his words. Story 25. My friend worked at several shops of a local chain. At one, they sold tokens for video preview booths. There were signs up stating that it was illegal to spill bodily fluids, though, of course, it happened all the time. One day, this guy with a speech impediment comes up to the counter, and yes, this story is funnier if you can hear the voice, and asks, "Is it okay if I come in my shorts?" My buddy's like, "Did you read the sign?" The guy asks again, and my friend just says, "I don't know. Whatever, dude." At another shop, there was a regular of his who came in for barely legal mags and stuff. When unsold issues get sent back to the publishers, they'll shrink wrap a couple different ones together and sell them for a reduced price. The guy comes in one day, and my friend tells him some barely legal packs came in. He wouldn't buy them, since the girls were no longer just 18 anymore. Story 26. I used to work at Ulta, clearly not a keck shop. Had a boyfriend of a fellow co-worker there come in for a personal massager. Initially, I thought he meant those kind that you use on your back and whatnot. It wasn't until he described what he was looking for a bit more that I realized this man was looking for a vibrator in a makeup store. Story 27. I worked in a store that sold Kex toys in the back for a while. This guy came in, super creepy, and was walking all around the store talking about very weird things. Can't remember what specifically. He made his way into the Kex toy area. All the while, I'm trying to watch him on the security camera because he seemed super shady. Eventually, about 20 minutes after I was supposed to be closed, I got him out of the store, went to the toy area, and somehow the dude managed to get a small vibrator out of a box. He also left gobs of what I only guessed was Vaseline all over the boxes of toys that he was touching, as well as on anything in the store he touched. It was pretty gross, especially considering the fact that I was only working in a novelty store with a small Kex toy section, and because I had to clean it all up. Story 28. Had this friend who worked at one. She told me that there was once this customer, drunk as hell, came into the shop asking for Kex. The shop's employees were all ladies and the only guy was the guard. So the ladies all replied that the place wasn't a brothel. The guard comes up. The man, seeing the guard, begins to cry. He says that he has never had Kex his entire life and he doesn't want to die a virgin. Turns out he had just come from the doctor and found out he had cancer. So he got drunk and went on a rendezvous to find a hooker. He came to the wrong place. Story 29. I've mentioned it before, but a girl I was seeing worked a few nights a week at a Kex toy shop. Once at the start of her shift, a woman called and said, "My son bought a Kex doll there and it's leaking. Can he return it?" She explained that he could get a replacement, but no refund. A very normal-looking guy in his 30s came in later for an exchange, but the manager of the store did it. Story 30. I don't work at one, but I have a reasonably funny story about one. So it's a co-worker's 30th birthday, and we want to get him a surprise card that has naked men on it. Well, the gay dude that works with us says he will go to the Kex store in the gay boarhood to get it. Perfect. Well, he's never been to one. He calls me when he gets there, freaking out because he came across a big rubber fist that's about 16 inches long and 4 inches wide. He was about to cry. He made it out with the card, though, and I was so proud of him. Story 31. I just asked my friend who worked at one this the other day. She said a guy came in with super tight. Short cutoffs came in and had poo running down his leg. He bought underwear. He paid by cash, and the guy handed the cashier a shit-covered bill, and the guy working till accepted it and used a Kleenex to take the money. This was a Kex shop in a bad part of town known for gross people. DR. Poo-covered man bought underwear and paid with poo-covered money. Would have been funnier if he bought butt plug. Story 32. Worked in video store with a little back room with a velvet curtain where we had the VHS tape covers put into 3 binders for the customers to browse and then tell me which ones they want to rent. Most people didn't try to hide what they were renting. They'd just come up and ask for Interview with the Vibrator or Ass Adventures 2. But I loved this one guy that tried to sneak it in with Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead. Unfortunately, we had already packed up all the pornos by that point since we were moving to a new location. So he had ignored the sign stating that they couldn't rent adult films, so this poor man had to leave with just a Christina Applegate movie that he clearly didn't even want. Story 33. I used to manage one. You meet some interesting people for sure. I loves the people who would try to bring newborns in and didn't understand the whole "no one under 18 allowed." They used to reply with, "But it's just a baby." Also, we used to make a game out of calling people out on things. We always got frat dudes buying gay as a joke for a friend, but why were they buying the most expensive ones? Story 34. Obligatory. No one will ever see this because I'm so late to the party, but a couple of weeks back, closing on a Friday night, I had a drunk woman come in with her equally drink man toy. She opened the door and walked in and squealed, arms outstretched, almost running to me, wanting to pet my beard. I was leaning on the counter and said, "No, I don't want you to touch me." She said, "What if I do it anyway?" I responded by standing up and going to sit down about 6 feet away from her. I managed to snap a picture of her in all her glory. Story 35. Not exactly a Kex shop employee story, but I remember my friends laughing their arses of one day at school as I'm entering the room. I asked them what's up. They tell me they saw my dad coming out of a Kex shop at the local shopping center. Turns out my dad was really embarrassed when he met them outside. It might not seem that big of a deal, but when you are 12, it's pretty funny to see your mate's dad come out of a Kex shop. Story 36. Not my story, but this. One of my best friends, Brian, was the store manager. From what he said, a rather large woman came in and stole the Latino lover. Pretty hilarious to see your friends work on the news, all because someone was too cheap to buy a $40 dildo. Woman steals vibrator called Story 37. My ex used to work at a really gross, seedy porn rental. They didn't sell anything, only rented store. I'd hang out with him when he was working since it was never busy, and his boss could care less. We'd mostly play PS2 or watch the really cheap, stupid cartoon DVDs that they were also required by law to carry. Most of the customers were dads and truckers. One afternoon, a big, hulking fat trucker comes up to the counter with his rental in hand to return. He said he wanted to file a complaint and get his money back. The chicks in the movie didn't have enough dicks, he claimed. Story 38. Long-time lurker. This is my first post. Dad, I worked at one throughout college. It was an upscale shop. The windows weren't covered. Lots of couples and women came in. I had a gentleman customer looking at the lubes cluelessly, so I went over to ask if he needed assistance. He was curious about the flavored lubes. No problem. We have testers. Here, this one is popular. I take a random strawberry-flavored one and put a little dab on his finger. He looks at it, and then looks at me as licks it off. Is this what you taste like? Oh. Story 39. I worked in a keg store while I was going to university. One night, I see my English professor walk in. He doesn't see me, though. He looks around for several minutes and sets down a video on the counter and then looks up. The look of panic on his face was hilarious, and he started stuttering, asking me not to say anything, if I would. After I reassured him, I looked down at his chicks with glasses. Perhaps if I'd worn glasses, I would have received an A in that class. Story 40. I worked at a larger adult store for 3+ years. Nothing really fazed me by the time I left. One of the funnier stories. Got a phone call later in the evening from someone saying they lost their keys to their handcuffs, and if they came in, could we unlock them? Couple hours go by, still nothing. Then about 45 minutes before we closed the store, a young couple walk in the door, hand in hand. One of them had a Juggalo shirt on. I knew it was the people that called. Sure enough, handcuffed together. We were able to free them. I wonder how embarrassed they were. Story 41. I used to work in a porn store in 1997 and 2000. Great one. Down on Youngji and Dundas in the ugly city of Tao. We had all kinds of things happen there. One day, a certain young desperate man ran in the store, ripped a plastic pussy off the wall, and took it into a private room to have a little fun with it, and then left it behind. No, we didn't resell it, and it sat in the boss's office for a while. I guess it eventually got chopped up and thrown out. Story 42. Not mine, but a friend's. People always ask about the solidness, shut up, it's a word now, of glass dildos. They have one on their solid wood register counter they always use as a demonstration. They always say, "What? You mean this type here?" and go slam on the counter. They used the same dildo for years, and it never broke.